What is National Socialism? There's a tendency, especially among radical social liberals, to call everything and everyone more socially conservative than themselves in their ideology, Nazi and Nazism. Not only does this ignore the ideology and policies of Nazism, but it also incentivises an actual Nazi backlash, as people denigrated with the label feel they have nothing to lose after their legitimate concerns were dismissed with pejoratives. This has consequences, and it also makes light of the crimes committed by the Third Reich and its allies. It's inappropriate to label someone a Nazi if they hold dissenting views on ethnography and cladistics. It speaks volumes that something so obvious needs to be pointed out. Wanting to reverse demographic displacement in an ancestral homeland does not make someone a Nazi. The ideology has its roots in Czech priest Jan Hus. Hus opposed papal spiritual supremacy, as he made clear during the papacy of Pope Boniface VIII. He opposed the church on ecclesiology. Ecclesiology is the study of the church, it's the origins of Christianity, its relationship to Jesus, its role in salvation, the polity, its discipline, its eschatology. Eschatology is the theology concerned with death, judgment, the final destiny of the soul and mankind. And he opposed the church on its leadership. He opposed the church on simony, which is the sale of church offices and artifacts. His opposition to simony was based on his opposition to the sale of indulgences. He opposed the church on the holy sacrament of the Eucharist, which is post-transubstantiation consumption of Christ's body in order for our sins to be forgiven. Pope Alexander V issued a papal bull to excommunicate Hus, as he was seen as an obstacle to uniting a divided church. He was influenced by the Byzantine Rite, which is associated with orthodoxy. It should be remembered that Christ was nailed to a cross by the original fascists in the Eastern Roman Empire. He was executed in 1415 at the Council of Constance. This led to the Hussite War between 1420 and 1434. The Catholics supported the Utraquist faction of the Hussites, as they believed that the Roman Rite and Byzantine Rite should be administered to the laity, where the Taborites were more extreme in their rejection of Catholicism. Taborites became the dominant Hussite faction in Bohemia. Catholics and Utraquists were recognized as legally equal in Bohemia after the religious peace of Kutná Hora in 1485. Bohemia and Moravia remained largely Hussite, and that was the case until Ferdinand II imposed Catholicism after the Battle of White Mountain during the 30 Years' War. This led to Taborism being seen as a symbol of Czech independence. This led to the creation of the Czech National Social Party in April 1897 due to ethnic tensions between Germans and Czechs, which was a foreshadowing of the Sudeten crisis. The Czech National Social Party split from factions in the Young Czech Party and the Social Democratic Party. Look up Stalin's quote on social democracy. It was a socially liberal Czech nationalist party. It opposed the Habsburg monarchy. Despite its espoused pacifism, it relied on violent street protests. They benefited from the disintegration of Austria-Hungary. The more autocratic the Habsburg monarchs were, the more the National Socialists could propagate about an oppressive state. The more treacherous the National Socialists were, the more the Habsburgs could justifiably assert there were internal threats to the empire. The National Socialists believed that the Czech workers were not merely oppressed because they were workers, but that they were Czech too. This ignores the fact that Czechs moved into the Sudetenland and undercut German workers. It also ignores that Ferdinand V was fond of the Czechs and spent a large amount of time in Prague Castle. It should be noted that Benito Mussolini was inspired to create the Italian National Fascist Party by the Czech National Socialist Party. Their ideological agitation had historical consequences, as it provoked a backlash from Germans and Austrians in the form of the German Workers' Party. It also influenced Ruthenian Ukrainians, which led to Simon Petlura, who influenced Stepan Bandera, and it led to Ustašism in Croatia-Slavonia. When the former became part of Soviet Ukraine and the latter became part of the Kingdom of Serbs, Croats and Slovenes, also known as Yugoslavia, these ideologies did not simply just disappear, especially given the Bolshevik victory in the Ukrainian-Soviet War, the Polish victory in the Polish-Ukrainian War, and Romania putting down the Kutná uprising in Bessarabia. The Ukrainian War of Independence was ultimately a failure. What do National Socialists believe? They believe that people outside of their ethnic group are Untermenschen, which translates literally as undermen and idiomatically as subhumans. This means you could flatten a nation's cities on the basis that the inhabitants of that country are Mediterranean Semites. It enables starving, useless eaters, as it is not beneficial to feed those seen as a drain on society. This goes against the teachings of Jesus Christ that we are all made in God's image and are equal in the eyes of the Lord. This directly led to Lebenswürdiges Leben, which means life unworthy of life. If people are subhumans, unworthy of life, it means any crime against them is permissible up to and including extermination. It meant that Pavlovich's Ustasha could say good night to all in Jasenovic, and that Tutman's Ustasha could expel and wipe out Serbs in Croatia and Slavonia during Operations Flash and Operation Storm. It meant that the organisation of Ukrainian nationalists, the UPA and Waffen-SS, could take down Russians and Poles with hails of bullets, as well as burning down their houses with the inhabitants inside. It meant that Banderites could violate the Minsk Accords for over half a decade by shelling Donetsk and Luhansk, as well as increasing the shelling tenfold before the special military operation began. If people weren't worthy of life, then it rationalised aborting the next generation of said people, as was laid out in Nuremberg and the crime of abortion. If people were subhumans, unworthy of life, it rationalised castrating and sterilising said people in the name of eugenics and racial hygiene. If people were classified as Untermenschen but not Lebenswürdiges Leben, it meant they were fit for slave labour. This meant people could be worked to death in service of a national war effort, as many were in producing armaments and munitions for the Eastern Front. National Socialism, at its very core, is anti-Christian as those practices and policies are sins against humans created in the image of God. If people are not human beings made in the image of God with the inalienable rights that go hand in hand with that, then it meant that an autocrat could take away the rights of workers to unionise in the name of coordination and synchronisation, as was the case with the German Labour Front and Gleichschalten. This again touches on slave labour, as work makes you free, and as was the case with arms production factory workers, they could be worked to death. Another policy of National Socialism is the concept of living space. If territory desired by your people is inhabited by those seen as subhuman, then it enables the process of taking that living space from the subhumans. This was the case when the Third Reich formed the Kosovan SS to take Kosovo from the Serbs. National Socialism is a pernicious form of fascism. Fascism is the merger of corporate power with state power, and this explained the German Workers' Party's privatisation policy. Enterprise and industry was put in the hands of plutocratic German financiers, but the Third Reich's cabinet still controlled the practices of said businesses. This meant that the plutocratic financiers still reaped the profits, while the Third Reich could still command economic and industrial policy. This meant that workers could be fully exploited to the maximum potential for profit and the implementation of government policy. To summarise, National Socialism is no joke, and when large groups are waving hooked crosses, it's already too late. The term Nazi should not be thrown around lightly. To those who find National Socialism attractive, please show me an example of people from that ideological proclivity entirely reversing the malign effects of pan-Europa and practitioner idealism. Still looking? That's because there are no examples.